For ultimate freshness, nothing beats an oyster, sealed and pristine as the day it was born until opened 2 or 3 years later. Oh, poor octopus leg. But you really have to shuck your own to get the full flavor of it, not buy it in a vacuum-sealed jar, have somebody do it for you a day earlier at the supermarket. Who better to learn from here than a man who's shucked over, he claims, 8 million oysters in his lifetime. That's an awful lot of mollusks there. John the Oysterman Stewart, who started shucking at the very first bar, Bentley's Seafood, shows us exactly how. Okay, here's the real deal. Hands up out there in TV land. How many of you have eaten oyster? A lot of hands I see out there. How many of you have actually opened, or as we call it, shucked your own oyster? Not so many hands this time. We're going to learn the sometimes seemingly mythological art of shucking an oyster. How many of you have committed the mortal sin of going to your supermarket, buying an expensive French or Scottish or Irish oyster, and asking them, open it up and leave it on the half shell, pack it on ice so I can serve it as an hors d'oeuvre tonight at my dinner party? That's a no-no, according to John Stewart, our oysterman. A lot of people, I do that because I'm scared. I don't know whether to use a screwdriver or a fork or a knife or a hammer or what. But most people don't shuck their own oysters at home. How come?
Yeah, because probably people obviously know it's pretty dangerous if you don't know what you're doing, actually. And another thing is, I would always recommend that you use a proper oyster knife.
So don't use a screwdriver?
Don't ever use a screwdriver.
Not even a power screwdriver?
No, I wouldn't say.
Easy. Let's talk through oysters a little bit. They all look like relatives to a certain degree. They're not the prettiest things in the world, but golly gee whiz, there are pearls of deliciousness inside. Can you tell us to differentiate? Can you teach us how to differentiate between oysters?
The color of the oyster depends mainly basically on the water, and the shapes of the oyster also depends on the currents that the water, the oysters are farmed on.
Oh, that's right. Whether it's whether the current tends to be going this way or that way.
Yeah, they tend to,
it'll feed. Yeah, and oysters they act like filters, don't they? They basically, the sea delivers their nutrition to them, so they're always going like that.
All the time. Like most of the time, yes, they open when they're in the sea, and they basically feed on something called plankton.
Okay. You're going to teach us how to open an oyster. Is that correct?
I certainly would. Yeah.
Okay. Now, first of all, what tools do you need? And
the most important thing is, you need to get a proper knife.
Okay. Yeah. All right. This is not a divot repair tool for golfing. This is made for shucking oysters. For
shucking oysters, and I have pointed it out. Basically it was a little bit rounder, but I pointed it out to make it easier for me to shuck, and I don't recommend anybody to sharpen them to this extent because it can be pretty dangerous. And the most important thing is you've got to use a cloth to protect your hand. Okay. Right. Okay. The only difference is I'm left-hander here, and the oysters, basically what I do is, I'll take one of these oysters, right? I have a very good grip. The most important is this hand that holds the oyster here. Right, yeah. So, some people think it's this hand that's very important, this knife, but because you need to have a very solid grip on this one here. So you don't have to move. And basically, you go in there, you don't have to go right to the middle of the hinge here. You're just going right into the side here. And then you don't use too much force. There's no need to use always knife pointing downwards. Right. So in case you slip. And there you go, with a little bit of pressure, and you flip it over.
The hinge.
Yeah.
Okay, so basically not this side here, not the rounded side.
No, because a lot of shell gets into the oyster.
Okay, so you want to basically loosen the hinge because then the whole thing just comes off.
Comes off.
Is that it? That's all there is to it?
That's it. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Pretty not easy. And then what I do is basically I
just shimmy it open. Right?
Yeah, and then I use my thumb to hold the two shells together so that it has a gap in there, and then I just slide my knife on the top shell. Oh, okay. And that's it. It has a clean cut.
How can you tell looking at it? What if there are little leaks or something, or it's been shipped and there are cracks between the two sides of the shell and it's been exposed to, air for a long time?
Actually, oyster would have nothing inside it. While if it's a live oyster, there's nothing that can live inside this oyster. Unless you see an oyster that is open. I have one to show you.
Yeah, this one you said don't ever buy something like this because I don't know if you can see it on TV, but there's quite an opening there. Yeah. Look at the top.
If you ever see an oyster,
there's quite a gap in there.
Yeah, right.
Okay. So that's the first sign.
Yeah, that's the first sign. If you see a gap, you never buy that oyster because it has to be dead. It is certainly dead by now.
Okay. Can you open this one and show us what a? God, this sounds kind of macabre. The dead oyster looks like.
There we go.
Now Looking at it, I'm not sure I could tell the difference, though.
I would say it is dead already because you can see it is, I mean, basically, it doesn't have too much liquid at the moment. I will shuck another oyster where I can show you the liquid.
Yeah, I can see this one looks like it's hemorrhaged or something like that, like it's sort of bloated.
Yeah, now this one, I feel it, Bunny, you can feel it.
Oh, there's definitely weight in there.
It's got weight in there, so there's got to be a lot of water in there.
Yeah.
Okay, the bigger the oyster, you've got to use a little bit more force. And then, that's a pretty tough one.
Yeah, it's a big oyster though.
Yeah, there we go. You got that, and then we make sure that get a clean cut. Now look at that one.
Ah, okay. This is a very nice specimen there. You see all the water, see the liquid, the sea brine, very, very fresh sea brine. Just brimming with meat and
that's a beautiful
aroma and flavor as well.
Smells of the ocean.
You said you've had accidents?
Oh yes, I've had some very serious accidents.
What, basically stabbing yourself?
Basically what happens is, that's why I said we need to protect your hand here with this cloth. So basically, and this hand is very important because if you slip, the place you're going to get is right here. Right. This is the area which you have to really protect.
Oh my goodness.
Many
oh dear. But they're pretty old. That was in your early days.
In the early days, yeah.
Okay, so it's not negotiable. I mean, you really have to have hand protection.
You've got to have protection.
Excellent safety tip. Safety first, according to John the Oysterman. Just to recap, must have a towel, hand protection. Okay, go the opposite hand. John the Oysterman is left-handed, so everything looked a little bit reversed. Well, actually, you're watching out there in TV land, so I think you're okay. So you're kind of doing the same side he was doing. And get an oyster knife, okay? No Phillips screwdrivers, no Stanley screwdrivers, definitely no power screwdrivers. When we come back, we're going to learn how to enjoy beauties just like this on AC. John says oysters tend to expire in 3 years anyway, so if you have any compunction against eating them, maybe that's a pacifying factor.